So one thing just before it starts, I hope you can hear me.
Yeah,
Um,
I can hear you.
yeah, if you can like at the start of the session, I just set the protocol. Okay, if you have
Mhm.
any question, please just write it in the chat box so that no one speaks out. Number one, and then we will moderate majority of the answers at the end. But if there
Mhm.
is a pressing question, then Dr. Hassan will speak out. So इससे होगा कि मतलब there will be more clarity with the participants.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I will do that. I will do exactly that. Thank you. Yeah. Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Amir Abbas, and I am here today with a series of sessions on R programming for analytics. And as we have been discussing on our WhatsApp groups, that this is going to be a very short series, and this is the first session in that series. Um, without Before getting started, I'm going to lay out some rules for this session. First of all, I will be giving you people a presentation on our studio, and that is going to look like this. And I'm going to go through each the slides and the programming snippets or the code chunks in there. So here is how it is going to work. If you have a question which is pertinent to the point which I'm discussing, please write that down in the comments. And I have Dr. Hassan Nawaz Tahir, who have been kind enough to help me facilitate this session or help me conduct this session. He will be looking at the comments and letting me know or interrupting me if needed. So I will take those questions. There will be two types of questions. If the question is relevant to the point which I'm discussing, I will stop and just answer that question. And second type of question, which is not relevant to the point which I'm discussing, that I will take in the end. So just to give you an example, if whatever question you have, put them in the comments. And what we have, just to give you an example, for example, there's a question. I will project that in this way to the screen. And as an example, I will answer this question. That will you be saving this video? Yes, the video will be saved with the same link as you joined, and it will be available for later use whenever you want. So that is going to be the basic logistics related to the question. So the bottom line is that whenever you have a question, you just type them in the comments. That is the first thing. The second thing is what I'm going to do. The format of this presentation is going to be that I have some slides and I have some code chunks. I will be going through both of them in the same RStudio, which means that I will not be changing between PowerPoint and RStudio. I will have our programming, some instructions on some slides, and some code practices within the same window. and I will be, both of them will follow each other. So what I want you people to do, in case if you are able to follow up with me, then that is excellent, that is amazing, that's ideal, I would say. But in case if you think that you are not able to follow up with me, then still that's okay. I mean, don't sweat it. What you would want to do is just to focus on what I'm saying and try to understand the conceptual, try to get a conceptual understanding of what we are getting at. Uh, and later on, what you would want to do is to revisit this video again, and then I will share the same document in the form of a PDF document in the WhatsApp group, and later on you can also use them and practice them in your own time. And if you have any questions, you can we can continue with this discussion. So before we get started, let's hear from Hassan. Hassan, can you hear me? First of all, are you with us?
This session and for giving us this opportunity to learn art. Is there anything specific you would want from my end?
Yeah, just as I said, you just keep an eye on the chat and just like let me know if the fonts are right or things like that, as we discussed earlier, right? Okay.
Sure.
Okay. So with that, I'm going to continue with the session. And as I said to you people, this session is on R programming basics, and to be specific, R is a programming tool. It's a language. And before we go into R, first of all, I have to talk a bit about what is a programming language and what is a language. It's very simple. For those who are new to computing, even the concept of language may be very unclear to them. So let me explain that in very simple terms. In computer sciences, there are different languages. For example, R, Python, SQL, Go, etc., Ruby, etc. And language is, for example, I'm talking to you people in English. So this is my language, and I talk to you people, and you understand, and then you respond back to me. So it's a medium of communication. In the same way, when you talk to a computer, a language is something which helps you interact with the computer. So that is something which makes an interface between human being and the computer. So if you have to give some instructions to the computer and get some response back from the computer, you have to do that with the help of different languages which computer understand, and you learn those as well, so that human being understand and the computer understand. You give some instructions to the computer and get something back from the computer. So that is a very baseline or basic introduction to what a language is. And as I said, that there are different languages. R is one of them, Python is another of them, SQL is there, and there are so many languages, C++, Java, etc., etc. R is one of them. And what is specific about R is that it's a language which has been made by statisticians for statisticians. Other languages like Python or other languages, they're primarily focused on giving instructions in a way which computer scientists will understand. But R is a language which have been made by statisticians for statisticians, which means for research purposes, it has a lot of analytical diversity. It has a huge number of packages. It has a huge number of functionality, which we will try to explore as much as possible. And why should you learn R? So that is something we will try to go to in our subsequent portion of this presentation. So let me go forward over this. And so what happens is that R is a very like you will ask a very basic question, that why should I use R as compared to Stata or SPSS or other SAS? So like there are three major softwares which you might have already learned if you are a public health professional, or you have done some level of training, you have undergone some level of training in different statistical packages or softwares. You might have either learned SPSS, you might have either learned Stata, or you might have already learned SAS. So you might ask a very obvious question: why should I take the pain of learning R? So here is a basic. There are a lot of reasons. There are a lot of reasons for that, but there are a few obvious reasons. First of all, very important, R is open source, which means that you never have to pay anything to anybody. That's one thing. Second is that the level of functionality which R has, the things which you can do with R, you cannot do with any of the other available softwares. So despite the fact that it's a free software, it has a huge functionality, which means that you can make interactive graphics with R. You can do a huge number of you can use R to run basic, from basic to intermediate to advanced, and innovative statistical methods. You can make interactive graphics, and there's a huge list of things which you can do with R. So that is one of the reasons, because if when you're talking about analytics, there is a discussion whether you should choose between Python and R. But definitely, ideal is that you learn both of them. But if I have to choose between the two for analytics, I will choose R. So that is basically my personal recommendation, because of the diversity of the functionality which is present in R. Especially, there are a few things which are very strong in R. Like I will give some examples in this session as well. In the end of when we reach towards the end of it, I have some demonstrations that include interactive graphics, are very strong in R. There's something which we will not be able to talk about, which is a Shiny application, which you can make in R. You can Google what is a Shiny application, but what Shiny application is that what you can do is you can process your data in a way where the end user can interact with the dashboards and make any modifications to the data. So these are the kind of things which you can do with R when you are strong in R programming. Now, coming to the objective of this session, the objective of this session is just to introduce how programming is done in R. And the second thing is that I'm going to motivate you to learn R, because if I'm able to make you enter this universe of R, this R environment, then there's a huge opportunity for you to learn from internet, and we'll be continuing on this during these sessions as well. So before I get started, I will just have a look if there is any question. So what I will do, as I told you that I will also want Dr. Tyre to interrupt me, but after every 5 or 10 minutes, I will also see to the chat if there is any question, if there is anything which might need my attention or things like that. I do not see something so far. So as I said, if you haven't been able to download it yet, no problem. You just follow along with the session. Ideally, you should be able to do whatever I'm doing. But if you're not able to do that, you can do it later at your own time, because I'll be sharing the PDF of this presentation with you people. So before anything, this is the R environment in which I'm doing the presentation. So if I give you a basic overview of R, this will be something which you will have you will write the script, which means that your coding will go here. This in the bottom, we call it the console, and I will just increase its size if I can do that. Yeah. So this is the console. This one where I'm saying 2 + 2, that is where you will write your script, and this place where you will have all of your variables, and there will be some description. So your window will be divided into 4 portions. What I'm going to do for this presentation is I'm going to use something which is known as R Markdown, which is actually a bit advanced, not very advanced, but it's very facilitative for running the sessions, and it divides your codes into different code chunks. But again, if you are not able to understand this thing, just don't worry about it. We will revisit these concepts later on. First of all, just focus on the subsequent slides which I'm just showing right now. Let me readjust my screen a bit so that you will be able to see it clearly. Let me decrease the size of this console so that you can focus on the slides only. And let me take the slides there, and let me now see if they're visible on the screen. Yeah. Okay. So first of all, starting from very basics, right? You can use, and this is something I would recommend, that when you install your R Studio or R basics, you should use R for these things just to get a basic confidence of how R works. You can use R as a basic calculator, right? With the help of R, you can do addition, subtraction, division, multiplication. You can raise one number to the power of another number, and or there is something, a concept which is known as modulus in R. We'll be talking about it. So how does this work, right? Everybody knows how these things are, so let's go to how it works in R. And so for example, talking about addition, very simple, right? So if I say 5 plus 9 is equal to I apologize, like there will be multiple times when I will be going back and forth between the window to increase or decrease the size of it. So until I get a sense of what works or not. Hassan, is this the right font and we should go with this font, right?
Yes, yes. We can easily see.
Yeah, okay. So simple as that. Like talking, as I said, that R can be used as a simple calculator. So when you say just write 5 and then put a plus sign and then like n, like whatever, it's very simple. And when you run this code, you will just have 14, which means that 5 plus 9 is equal to 14, right? And the way to run a particular code portion of the code is to select that code and then press control and enter, and that will run it, right? In the same way, we can do subtraction. So again, very simple. If you have to subtract two numbers, here I'm subtracting 5. I'm subtracting 9 from 5. When I run this thing, then obviously the answer is -4. Similarly, I can do multiplication. Up here, you have to remember, like for R, if you want to tell R to multiply one number with another number, you have to put the star in it. So what it's saying, what this code is saying, is it's telling R that take 5 and multiply it with 9. And when I run this code, obviously the answer is 45. In the same way, we can do division, and the division operator for R is this slash. Like you have to remember that you have to you see the direction of the slash. For example, if I use this slash, then it will not work, right? It will give me an error. For example, if I run, you can see that it's giving me an error, and you can see this error sign, and even if I run, this is giving me an error, right? So you have to be using the correct direction of the slash, and you have to run it, and then like obviously the correct operator and the answer is given to me. So this is division. Now here things become a bit I will not say tricky, but you have to be cognizant about that. And one thing I have to tell you people is like you do not remember these things when you are using R. It's a very common practice in programming that, okay, so let's assume I want to raise one number to another number. I want to raise one number to the power of another number, and I do not know how to do it. You will have to just Google that. And we do that all the time. Like, especially when you learn R and you learn Python as well, and like you have to be bilingual or you are using multiple languages, then it becomes extremely confusing because there are very subtle small differences in between the two. So you just Google them, and like you always have to Google, because it is very very easy for you to forget this thing unless like you keep programming to the extent that like it becomes a second nature. So what this code is doing is it's taking 8 and making it with this symbol, it's raising it to the power of 3. So it means that take 8, raise it to the power of 3. So and then you can see that 8 is raised to the power of 3, and the answer is 512. Now something becomes a bit trickier. If you want to get the remainder of a number, use the modulus symbol, which is this sign, which is 2 times percentages symbol. It will give you the remainder of remainder when one number is divided by another number. For example, if I want to divide 34 by 5 and get only the remainder, right? So then I will have to use this symbol, which is known as modulus. Okay, so if I run this,
Dr. Amir.
D.
Sir,
Yes.
there are two questions. So the first question
Okay.
is, okay, they're saying, okay, does this respond, like, do you get the answer when you press enter? That is the first question. And the other question is, okay, what's the meaning of one in a square bracket in console?
Okay. Very good. So that's a very right. So let's go to the previous code chunk where I was showing you very simple operations. Are you able to see my screen? I think the screen went blank. Can you see my screen?
Yes, yes, you can see this.
Okay. Okay. Let's assume you want to run this code chunk, right? You just what you do is just select this thing, right? And when you have selected it, just uh, uh, press Control, and when you have pressed, when the Control key is pressed along with that, enter. I mean, press Enter, which means that I will just type it over here. Is that what you need to do is to do Control plus Enter. So this is something which you need to do to run a particular code. So this is the answer to the first question. And the second question was, okay, let me actually project it over here. Yeah. So what is the meaning of this, uh, uh, like the brackets around in the console? Is it represent the statement number? So what happens is that, for example, if this at this time, what I would say, just ignore this one. You will understand this when we come later to when you have more than one printouts, when they're printing out like longer things which have something more than one number. But at this time, it you can assume that this is something meaningless. Just focus on this number and just assume that this is a output in isolation from this number one. And we will definitely come back to this. So if there are no other questions, I will continue with the discussion related to modulus. Okay. So what I was talking about is that when I want to divide 34 by 5, and what my intention is to get the remainder, right? I do not want to get anything else but the remainder. What I would want to use is this symbol, which is known as modulus, which is actually 2 times percentages. So what I will get, again, I will select this code, I will press Control Enter, and I will get the answer of 4, which means that if you divide 34 by 5, the remainder is 4. Why would I want to do that, right? Uh, the reason I want to do that is like for I mean, like provides you with a number of ways to manipulate numbers, and these skills come handy in different situations. So I will go back to the slide which I was talking about, and we just to see that you can use R as a calculator. And what I would emphasize is that you should start using R as a calculator and play with different numbers. Like take one number, add it to another number, subtract between the two numbers, do the subtraction between the two numbers, do division, multiplication, raise number to another power, and use this modulus operator. This, what it will do is it will give you some confidence on using the R environment, so that you can just like enter into this space. Uh, so again, let me see if uh, there is any other question. So what is the backend? What is backhand calculation? I do not actually understand what the question means. If you can just explain the question or be more explicit about the question, then I will be able to answer this better. And let me move forward to the next portion of this discussion. Okay. Now, as we have talked about using R as a calculator, that's something which you should be starting off. Now, for example, we have numbers. I want to assign them to a variable. Say I have a number 10, and I want to assign it to a variable X. So what should I use? Obviously, this one, which is equal to, I can say X equal to 10. Now that is okay. I mean, there is no problem in that from a programmatic perspective. But there is something which our programmers prefer. There is no programming strength or weaknesses of one or the other, like you can use either of them. But the only problem is that if you have to work on an international level for some reason, if you have to share your code, then when you're doing programming in R, this particular sign is preferred, which means that this is actually the combination of less than and a dash. And for functional reason, both of them are equal. And what do I mean by this? So what do I mean by this is that if there is something, say the number 55, and in the R environment I want to load it in the way that x is equal to 55. So what I will do, I will type x, I will type this sign as which is equal, which means equal to, and 55, right? So what it will do is that it will assign the variable x, 55 to the variable x, which means that if I print this out, then you can see that the result is 55. Okay. In the same way, there is I want to do the same operation to the variable y. What I want to say is that variable y is equal to 55. So the alternative option is this, which is less than. This is the combination of two things. It is the combination of less than and dash, and you can find out definitely, you know, less than, and you can between the 0 and the plus sign in your keyboard, you will have the key for the dash key without the shift. So if this is known as an assignment operator in R, as I told you, just like when you're sharing your code, this assignment operator is preferred by the R community, and you see when you see the code from any other person, you will see this used more often than this equal to. But for functional reason, there is no preference of one over other. So when I run this code, and when I run y, and it's also going to give me 55. So I want you people to be very clear about this concept, because this is something extremely important and is one of the very simple but very basic building block of how one of the, I mean, you should definitely at least get this thing from this lecture going forward. So any question related to this? Yeah, there is a question, is that what is the reasons for its preference? I do not know actually, like why one of them is preferred over others. And to be honest, if you feel like you don't like it, don't use it. The only when I'm studying in our assignments, we have been instructed, we have never been penalized if we use equal to as compared to this other assignment operator. The only thing is that on international forums, if you are sharing your code with somebody who is an avid R programmer, or the second reason being, if you read somebody else's code and if you see this assignment operator, you should know it, because it is potentially confusing that, okay, at some places somebody is using this equal to, and somebody is some other place somebody is using this less than and dash. So both of them are equivalent, and there is no reason from a functional perspective to prefer one over the other. Okay, so how to initialize more than one variable in a single line? Yeah, this is a very good question, but I will just hold on to this question at this moment, because we are just getting started with very basics, and we will hopefully we can definitely do that and things like that. But at this point, we just want to get familiarized with the basic terminologies and basic assignment operators and things like that in R. I think things like that will come on in the future talks or the future discussion. Okay, so if I want everybody to be absolutely clear about this point, which means that if I use equal to or this assignment operator, they're equivalent. They're almost equal from, not almost equal, they're exactly equal. They're a mirror of each other. The only difference is that when you read somebody else's code, you should be knowing that this is the same thing. And if you share your code on an international level with the community, which is expert in R, then you should be using assignment operator as compared to equal. For your internal purposes or for your project, if you use either of them, that is fine. Okay, so since there's no question on this point, I'm assuming that this point is quite clear, because though it is a very basic point, it's a very simple point, but it is very important that you understand. And it applies to anything. For example, if I say over here as an example, if I say that x is equal to z, then it means that I've assigned z to x and so on. So whatever is on the left side, and if you have an assignment operator or the equal sign in between, and there is something on the right side, R will make both of them equal, right? So it is going to be applied across the board, and I'm going to use that all the time. So what I've done over here is that as a separate code chunk, as a block of code, I've also assigned z to the variable, the number 10, right? So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to combine the concepts. In the first part, what I did was I told you that you can use R as a calculator. In the second part, what I did, I told you people that I can assign different numbers to X, different numbers, for example, I've assigned a number to X, I've assigned a number to Y, I've assigned a number to Z, right? So what I can do that now, I can sum them all together and I can save them to another variable. So what is this code saying, right? I've initially assigned X equal to a number, Y is a number, and Z is a number. And with the help of the plus signs, I'm just adding them and just saving this to another variable, which is known as all. And I'm going to run this code, right? So what it has done, it has added X, Y, and Z together, and I saved it to code. When I print it, I get the addition of the three, right? So this is very basic and very simple, but you can make it quite complicated, right? You can do all kind of, you can combine all the operations over there, you can add to number, you can subtract to number, and so on. So again, there is a question in the comments: what is a variable? Okay. Now the problem with very basic level questions is that it's very hard to answer them. But I would say like how do you define a variable in algebra? Right? I do not exactly know that textbook definition of variable, but I would say that if you know basic algebra, for example, if we say in algebra we say let x equal to 10, right? So we are using variables in the same way as we would use in algebra. So that is a very simple answer, but unfortunately, I do not know the textbook or algebraic textbook academic definition for variable. So if you are disappointed, I apologize for that. Going forward with this, now the next concept which we want to talk about is there are different types of variables in R. When you know the basics, how do we assign, what types of operations we can do with R, and how we assign one number to a variable. Now we want to understand some of the types of variables in R, and this is not an exhaustive list, but I've just chosen them to make it simple at this stage. First is integer, the second is character, third is logical, and fourth is factor. And I'm going to explain them to the code rather than talking about theoretically. For example, integer is something which is a round number. For example, 10 is you do not have any decimal points. There are round points. For example, if I say that the number of children, or say age of a person in years, or number of individuals, there cannot be round number. For example, if this 10 is a round number, definitely then I'm assigning it to a, so this is an integer. Now my name Amir, that is a character, because in Python we called it as string, in R we called it as character. That means anything which is this text, and you just, and the thing which you have to remember about the character or string variables, in R we do not call it we can call it a string, but like the type of variable will be character, and you have to assign, when you are assigning a character variable to this variable name, you have to put it in the inverted commas. So what I'm doing is, first of all, let me run this. First thing, I've assigned 8 to 10, integer 10. Then I'm assigning name, the variable name, to the character Amir, and the third is Boolean operator. Okay, and Boolean is true and false. Like the Boolean, the variable type Boolean will have only two levels. Either it's true or false. So if I assign the level true to this as the variable as, and I run it, right? So now what I do, when I print A, I will get 10 because I assigned it to 10. If I print name, let me type name first, and let me just print it. It will print the name Amir, and if I type S, it will print out true. So how would I know that which type of variable is each one of them? For example, A was what? A was assigned to 10, which is an integer, but I want to know what it is, right? Let's assume this A came from somewhere else. I didn't know. It came out from an operation, and I just want to know what class is it, and it's numeric. So why would I be interested in knowing the class of these integers or of these variables? Because there are some kinds of operations which can be done with certain classes as compared to others. For example, you can do some types of operations with characters. For some kinds of operations can be done with factors. Some kinds of operations can be done with integers, and so on. So you need to be knowing what is the class of individual variables is. In the same way, if I go to the other variables which I discussed, and if I want to know what is the class of it, the simple function. So let me also explain this. This is known as the function. Here it's, so if I generically write this function, what I will do is class, and I will open this bracket, and I will write whatever variable I want to know the class of. For example, A, right? I will put it in, and then I will run this code, and it is going to give me numeric. In the same way, if I run the second code, it's going to give me character, and the third one, S, it's going to give me logical. If I run this one, this is going to give me logical, because the class of the third variable was logical. And there were four types of variable which we talked about. I explained three of them, which is integer, character, and logical. And the fourth one is factor. And I'm going to talk about the factor variables in a bit, because there are some details which are not explained yet, to be able to familiarize yourself with the factor variable. Okay, so going forward, any questions so far? Now I'm going to go a bit faster, and if I can assume that you have understood this so far, that's okay. But if you haven't understood anything so far, you would not be able to follow along in the next portion of this talk. So please ask me question. Let me see if there are some question. It is something for which again, I do not understand what is this question related to. So please let me know in more detail what do you want to ask. So alphabetical representation of a numerical value is variable. Interesting. Okay, and then Abis is saying some computer science definition of variable is programming is a storage location of different data types. Okay, and then okay, so to be honest, I would just rely on this, because this is just I would say that from a statistical perspective, or from you just see how would you define a variable in algebra. Take that definition, and that's it. Uh, okay, she's saying that she just explained the definition of variables, and let's go forward. So vector. What is a vector? Now, after understanding, getting an idea of different types of variables, uh, let's talk about a vector. What is a vector? A vector is a sequence of data elements of the same basic type. What does that mean? For example, if you have numeric variables, vector will have all the numeric variables. If you have character variables, a vector will have all the character variables. If you have logical variables, a character will have all the logical variables. And if you have factor variables, a vector will have all the factor variables. For example, say I want to make a vector of numbers from 1 to 9. So what I will do, like if I say x equal to 1, then that is like I'm assigning only one number to this variable x, right? But what I want to do for some operation, I want to assign numbers from 1 to 9 to a variable named as numbers. So what I can do is I can use this simple operation, which is like, obviously I will type the name of the vector which I want to assign it to. I will use this assignment operation which I explained earlier, and then I will use this C. This is very important. Without that you will get an error. Then you will open the bracket. You will type the numbers from 1 to whatever you want, not necessarily in sequence. Here it's by chance I've put them in a sequence, but they can be random, they can be ascending order, descending order, whatever you want. And then you run this code, right? And then like when you print it out, you have assigned numbers, this say 1 to 9. The numbers of like numbers vector has the numbers from 1 to 9. Okay. In the same way, I have another vector where have all the character variables. For example, Sally, Maddie, Addie. These are the three names which I want to assign to the vector names. So in the same way, I will type the name of the vector. I will use this assignment operator. Then I will use this C, and then within the brackets. Now here, because it's a character variable, I will have each one of them in the quotation marks, and then I will run them. And when I run this code part, this will assign these into the names, and I will when I print it out, so the names vector has these three names saved to it. In the same way, the third type is, for example, a vector can be used to save some Boolean variable types. Let's assume true, false. As Boolean has only two levels, like just true and false. So what I will do, I will type on the answers as the name of the variable, this assignment operator, and then this C, and then all the values which I want to assign it to, which will obviously one of the two, which is the true or false. I will assign it to answers, and then I will run this code. And after running this code, I can just print it out, and like this answers will be printed out. Okay.
Dr. Ahmed, there are a few questions.
Okay.
People are asking what is a character, then what is a class, and then so I'll ask one by one. So first is what is a character?
Okay. Okay. So I think this is the question. I want to know about character, logical, or class. What are you defining? So this is very important that you ask and understand these questions. And here, character is, for example, I will say in Python you call them a string. For example, you have some statement. Let's assume it's somebody's name, it's an address, or something else similar. That is something you call as character. Logical is a variable whose answers are in the form of yes and no. Sorry, not yes and no, sorry, true and false. That is a type of variable whose levels can only be true and false. That is logical. Class is like we have different types of variables, and we we do not use the word type in R. We use the word class in R. So class is equal to the types of variable. For example, you want to know, okay, the answer is a vector. Answer has different variable. Answer is actually a vector. But if you go to the variables, if I go up on here and let's assume like, okay, S is a variable, right? or or name is a variable, or so on, or A is a variable, right? Now I want to know what is A, right? What is, one thing is what actually A is, like what, I mean, what is contained in A, that's one thing. 10 is contained in A. Okay. But now I want to know that what is the class of A, that what type of variable is A, right? And that is numeric. In the same way, name, what is contained in name, that's one thing, right? Name has the word Amir in it. So if I print alone name, then that will print out name Amir. But if I have to uh, find out the type of name, then that will be the character in the same way. I hope I clarified the question because they are very uh, uh, overlapping concepts. If it is still not clear, please feel free to ask them again and I will try to answer them again. Okay.
Dr. Ahmed, just one question
Yeah.
regarding object-oriented programming that is done in Python and stuff. So,
Mhm.
is this class related to that in some way, like a class representing like every variable is an object, and then the class is basically defining all the preferences of that object? Is that something like this, or is this totally different?
It's not that class as we
Okay.
used in object oriented class. It's just say I want to get the answer. Okay, I have a variable. What is the type of that variable? In R, one of the way to know that is to use this class function. Okay, so that is how you find out. And just don't go towards the object oriented uh, the classes in Python. That's a total different thing. So a simple answer is no. This concept and that concept is totally different, absolutely different. Okay. Okay. So then, okay, there's another question. And what do we mean by C? Okay, let me go to that code part. Okay. So, okay, so the question is that when you have a vector, which has a vector by definition is something which have the same variable types, right? For example, all of them are numeric. Sorry, all of them are, yeah, all of them are numeric. And then when you are using these to be saved to a vector, you use the C. Now the question is, what is this C? I don't know. This is something which you have to use. Otherwise, it will not work. For example, let me actually try for you, and I actually do not know what will happen, but let me try. But it will not be saved as a vector, or it may throw an error, right? I exactly do not know what is this C is, right? If I run it like this C, it gives you an error. So if you want to save all of these, which are the same types of variables in a vector, and what is a vector? Vector is some is vector has the same variables, has the same types of variables. If you have to save them as a vector, then you'll have to use this syntax. See, and most of the times, some of the times you may or may not know exactly. There must be a meaning to this. See, I actually do not know, right? If somebody else knows it, and let me know, that will be a learning exercise for me as well. But if you run this and then you can see that all these numbers are printed out. Okay, so I think there were some other questions as well. A variable is any characteristic that can be counted or measured? Yeah, I think this is something, a very basic definition of variable. Okay, then obviously saying class is a function that gives the type of the variable. Yeah, that's exactly how we use class in R. A class is a built-in function in R. Yeah, class is a function in R. Right now, which we are talking about, it's the function in R. By built-in function, we mean that that's a basic function. In the later talk, we'll be talking about what is base R and what are other packages in R. So yes, this is a function. Thank you, Abis, for clarifying this thing out. Okay, right. Okay, I think uh, there's something which I want to go to. Just bear with me. Okay, so what I can do right now is, let's assume I have different vectors. And as I told you people that vectors will have the same each vector will have the variables of the same class. For example, if there is a variable of the class numeric, then all of the elements or all of the members of the vector will be of class numeric, and so on, right? So what I can do, I can do all the operations which I have done on variables on vectors, because for example, if I can do addition, subtraction, division, or multiplication on those individual variables, I can do similar operations on the vector variable as well. For example, let me demonstrate this. Let's assume A is a vector, and as I told you that when you are making a vector, what you do is that you you type the name of the vector which you want to assign the values to. You use this assignment operator, and then use this C, which I told you that I exactly do not know but it stands for, and then you put in all the members of the vector which you intend to it to take, right? So when I run this code, it will assign A to these numbers and the type will be vector, and then in the same way I assign B to a vector, and when I print A, it will give 1 2 3, and when I print B, it will print 5 6 7 8. Okay, so what I can do now, I can do element wise operation on them. For example, I can add the first element in the vector A to the first element in vector B. I can add second element of the vector A to the second element of vector B, and so on. How would I do that? Very simple. Very simple. What I can do, first of all, I can just write A plus B, and rather than going to the next stage, I would just say, I would just like, let me start another code chunk for this. In here, I would just say A plus B, right? And that will give me the addition of the first element to the first element, second element to the second element, and so on. So first, 5 plus 1 is equal to 6. As you can see, you have 6, and the 6 plus 2 is equal to 8, and you have 8, and so on. So what I can also do is that rather than printing out all of them, I can do the same operation, right? I will say A plus B, and I can save it to another variable for later use for whatever purpose I need it later, right? So I will. So what is this doing? Is this variable all? This is not a variable. This is a vector actually, because it is the addition of two vectors, right? And then I will say all underscore add. I will. That is the name of the vector which I intend to make. I use the assignment operator, and as a repetition, I can use equal to, or I can use this assignment operator, which is less than or dash sign, and I can use the two vectors names, and I will say all underscore add, and this assignment operator A plus B. Okay, and then what I will do is and then print it out, and same result is printed as I did previously, right? In the same way, exactly in the same way, I can do all other operations, which is addition. This time I do subtraction, and I will get -4 because for all of them, because all of them are like when you do element-wise operation subtraction in the two vector variables, then you get -4 for all of them. In the same way, I can do multiplication, and I can save into this all multiply variable, and I get results of the multiplication. And in the same way, I can also do division. So the bottom line remains over here is that when you have a vector, you can do element-wise operation for each one of them. Now there are again some comments. Okay, so C. Okay, there are some answers from some of our colleagues. Thanks for adding. Aliaswar is saying C represents a one-dimensional array. Okay. Okay, what is the use of vector? So vector is also what you will do is you can make different vectors, and you can use it to make different you can do different operations with that. You can convert a vector into a column in a data frame, right? That is one thing. What is a data frame? I'm going to talk about in the later part of our discussion, but that is the basic concept. For example, what is a data frame? If you open an Excel sheet, individual, and you have data organized in an Excel sheet, in a spreadsheet, individual columns are there, right? and see that vector as a building block for that column. And you can make different vectors in isolation, and then you can make a data frame from that. And that is one use of vector, and there are many other uses of vector which you can see later on. Okay, and then this is our in our array is also a vector. Okay, and there is something else. I'm happy that now the point is that I'm also like teaching R is also a learning exercise. So it's good that people are commenting on the C simply storing all these values in itself. So when you call it C, it will show you the values that are stored in C. Okay, maybe. Yeah, Avis has something to add. C is a function, and we'll try and coerce it like list of elements to the same time if they are different. Okay. Obvious, I think let's not go into that territory because then it will be a bit complicated for our audience. But yeah, I understand what you mean. Okay. If this all is clear, let's move forward. If this is not clear, please ask me questions in the comments. Please. Let me do not let me go forward if it is not clear, right? In the meanwhile, let me load the next slide. Okay. Okay. So let me give you a very simple example. What we want to do is that there's a family where husband and wife works, right? There's a husband earning and there's a wife earning, and I want to find out the family earnings, right? And what we are going to do is, so what is happening is that um, let me start with this first. There we want to find out the earnings of husband wife for each month for 6 months. So I will have three vectors. One of the vector is this character. One of the vector has character variables, which are the names of the months for 6 months, which is January, February, March, April, May, and June. Okay, and then another vector will have the one of the vector will have the wife's earning for each month, and the second vector will have the husband earning. Right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to run each one of them. I can run all of them collectively as well. That's not a problem. So I can select all of them. I can run all of them collectively as well, right? Okay. So what I can do is that I want to know that for each month, what is the total earning, right? So what will be the total earning? Now, husband earning is a vector, wife earning is a vector. Now, what I want to do for each month, I want to know the total earning, right? So I want to do element-wise addition between the two vectors, which is for the first month, for the month of January, I want to add the earnings of wife to the earnings of husband, and so on for all the elements of the vector. And what I can do is convert that into another vector, because when you add two vectors, the addition will result in another vector, and that is the total earning. And when I print out the total earning, right, let me show it to you. It's showing the addition of the element wise members of each of the vector. So we'll have the first month's earning to the last month earning for each month. And returning to your question, Salima, what you said that what you do vector. So let's assume what I want to do. I'm not going to show you the code at this moment, but one of the use of vectors will be that I want to convert this into a data frame, right? A data frame is just a data set where you will be able to do further analysis on it. So I can convert this information into a data frame where the column headers will be husband earning, wife earning, and month. For each month, you will get the individuals as well as you can have all of this information in the form of a data frame. Any questions so far? And when I'm waiting for question, I will just take a sip of water to give me a break. All clear? If there are no questions, I'll move forward. Okay, so the question is, and if you want the annual earnings and not the monthly, very good question. Okay, now I did not intend to do the calculations like that, but okay. So the question is that let's assume we do not want the monthly earning, but we want the annual earning, right? Uh, with this data which we have made right now, we will not be able to do that. But what I assume is that you want to do the total earning, right? Because we have this vector, uh, which is showing the total earning for 6 months. So what I'm going to do is use this vector and calculate the sum of this vector and put it in there and just run this code. And I will get this total earnings for 6 months for the whole of the family. Now, what I'm going to do, in case had I just made the data for 6 months, but if the data was for 1 year, then with the same operation, you could have find out the total earning for 1 year as well. That's a very good question. Thank you. Okay. So now the next question is that for which months the total earning is greater than 6,500, right? And this is the application of the Boolean operators, right? Let's assume I want to find out, okay, we have the data for 6 months, and for which months the total earning is greater than 6,500. What I will do, I will just use this thing and see what I'm asking, or the question is that, okay, there's a vector which is total earning, and compare for each month, compare the element of the total earning with 6,500, and for each one of them, well, this is not right. I will just remove this part, okay, and just, oh no, that was right actually. I just, yeah, now I got why I put them both of them together, right? Okay, so what this is doing is taking a number 6,500, and for each element in the total earning, it is comparing with the 6,500, and if it is greater than 6,500, then it is returning as true for that element. If it is less than 6,500, then it is returning as false. So if I print out the total earnings vector, so for the first one, the total earning is 300, so you have false for that, and so on. For the months which have more than 6,500, you have true for that. You can see that, right? And this, the resultant components of this, we have not saved the result to any other vector, but if you save that to a vector, the components of that vector will be booleans. This data type is boolean, which is the result is true and false, right? So what I've done right now in the next step is to save the result to this vector, whether greater than, and whether greater than 65. That's what I mean. And when I print the elements of that vector, then it gives me true and false. Okay. Yeah. So there is another question: how do you place months against earnings? That's a question. That's a very important question. As I told you, that if you want to combine them in the form of a data frame, which I'm not going to do at this stage right now because we have not talked about the data frames, but you can convert, you can kind of combine them into a data frame and then do different analysis in that, and that's how would you be able to make combine them into one data structure. Okay, how long this session is going to go? It's going to go around this is meant for 2 hours, so we are 1 hour down the line, and we are, I think, will continue it for 2 hours. Okay. Okay, so again, as I told you people, that once you have saved them, the vector elements into one of the, you can do different types of operations. For example, you can find out the mean of the husband's earning, you can find out the standard deviation of the husband earning, and how you do that. Like, this is a mean function over here, and again, this is, so let me explain another point over here as well. There is a concept which is known as base R, which means that when you load R, all of this functionality will be there. And there is something which we will be talking about, packages, which means that some of the functionality will be not there in the base R, and you will need to install different packages to load those functionalities, and that will not work on base R. But mean is the function. Whenever you are using a function, ask yourself the question whether that is in the base R or that is in the package, and you will know with experience, and when you're using different types of R code or literature, that if some of the function is in the base R, or some of the function is in the some of the package which is not present in the base R, but mean function is present in the base R. So for example, this is the function, and I just need to put in the name of the vector inside that function, and I will get the mean of this vector. So I get the mean of the husband earning. In the same way, SD is a function, and if I put the name of the vector in the SD function, I get the husband earning, standard deviation of the husband earning. And another important point about this function is that let me explain the construction of the function as well. So this portion is known as the name of the function, which you will call the function. Whatsoever goes inside the brackets, that is known as argument. For example, this is husband earning, which is going inside the brackets, that is known as argument. So some of the function will have one argument, and others will have more than one arguments. Some of them will not have any arguments, and so that is something which you will experience as you go along with practicing different aspects in R. In the same way, I can find out the mean and standard deviation for wife's earnings. So, okay. So now I talked to you people about another variable. If you remember that we were talking about different types of variables, I said that there is another variable which is known as factor variable, and I did not explain it at that time because to get an idea of factor variable, you first need to have an idea about what is a vector. And now since you have a vector, then you have an idea about what is a vector, I can better explain what is a factor variable. A factor variable is another name for a categorical variable. If you understand what is a categorical variable, you will definitely understand what is a factor variable. For example, for some set of patients, I have this information whether that patient is positive or negative for hypertension, right? And how I find out whether the person is positive or negative for hypertension, I use this Y or N, where Y is yes and N is no, right? And in the same way, I will make any other factor. I will just save it to the vector hypertension, right? So what is this code doing is taking the information on a number of individuals on their hypertension status, stating whether they are positive for hypertension or negative for hypertension. If they are positive for hypertension, it's saying as yes, otherwise as no, and saving it to the vector hypertension, HTN. And when I'm printing it, it's just going to print Y and N. And now, as I told you people, what is the type of these variables? Such a type of variable is known as factor variable in R. So this is something which you need to remember. In other words, in plain simple words, factor variables is another name for the categorical variables. Okay, so let me see. Okay, so there are other questions. Is it possible to add parts of the earning? I do not understand what do you mean by this question. So I will see if you can just ask me again by more clarification. How to get the earnings of the husbands for the month July? Very good question. Okay, but that is again, obviously your question is a bit advanced. Let's hope we are not going to talk about indexing and other those concepts. So I'm just going to give it a password. It is a very good question. And for those who want to know about it, how you have to go into the concepts of vector indexing. Okay, so again, this is Danish's question. It's again like similar to his question. If, for example, I just need 2 months total earning for the couple. Yeah, again, this concept pertains to indexing. We are not going to talk about indexing in this session as well. Okay, and then Salima is asking, how is factor different from character? Very good question. Very good question. So, right. This is, let me think how to answer this question. Character is, say, when you're going to process the two. For example, if you have addresses, right? And address, there is a column or there is a vector for addresses. The individual address will be a character. That will not be a factor, right? Or if you have somebody names, that will be a character, right? But if you have something like a qualitative variable in the form of say yes and no, or whose responses are the option are out of options from a given set of choices, then that will be a factor variable. So this is a very important distinction which you have to make. And this is also important when you get the data set. Most of the almost at the majority of the times you will get the factor variables as character variables, and you have to change the factor variable, have to coerce it into 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 factor variables. Sorry, you will, when you get the data set, you will get the factor variables as character variables, and you have to change them into factor variables. I hope I am able to communicate it correctly. If not, just ask me the question again. Okay. So as I told you that, yeah, okay, I forgot that I have this point explained over there. So if I'm asking the class, it's giving me character, right? And but I just don't want you to be a character variable, because this is a factor variable. So I have to coerce it to, or have to change it into a factor variable. And if I want to change it to a factor variable, what I do, I use another function which is known as dot factor. I use that vector or that variable, and both of them will work. And use this code to convert the hypertension into a factor variable and save it into another. You can save into another name, or in the same, you can just change the same vector by just assigning back to it or its own self. And now when I run the type of it, now it's saying that it's a factor variable. So in summary, when you get a data set, you will have all uh, the variables which are supposed to be factors as characters, because they are imported as text. But with this piece of code, you will have to coerce them, or you have to change them into factor variables. Okay, so Salima is saying understood categorical variables. Yes, okay. And then what is she? It means R does not understand automatically factor. Exactly. So when you so it depends. For example, if you import a data set from maybe which have been pre-processed in other softwares like Excel, or say SPSS or SAS, where it has been automatically coded, in some of the cases you will get them correctly classified into factor variables, in others will not. But it will have to manually check different variables, and where needed, you will need to convert different factor variables into, sorry, different character variables into factor variables. Okay. Now moving forward. Okay. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. And then once you have these factor variables, you can use this table function to run what we simply call as the frequency of a variable or a vector. And this will give you so the table function, what it does, it's something which we in SPSS or Stata or SAS, it's just finding out the frequency of a variable or of a vector. Not of a variable. Obviously, when you have a variable, you have only one value. Variable will have one value. For example, if it's a vector or if it is a column, it will give you the frequency of that thing. Okay, right. And let's move to the next portion of our discussion, which is less than, greater than, equal to, or greater. So there are some comparison operators in R, right? And when we use one of the comparison operators in the previous discussion, and that is less than or greater than. And like you have to use these specific symbols when you are asking questions for comparison of one thing to another thing. And you will use less than or greater than, or less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to symbols to find out the answers to this. For example, let's assume I think X was already assigned to a variable 10, and if I want to check that, I will just before explaining this, let me see what X is assigned to. I will just type X and print it. Okay, so X is assigned to 1. So if I want to check, oh sorry, in this code I've assigned X again to 10. So I've assigned X to 10, and now when I print X, it will return 10. So now I want to check whether X is less than 10 or not. And the result should be what? X is not less than 10. X is equal to 10, right? the result is false. And again, if I want to check x is greater than 10 or not, and again the result should be false, right? So the result, as you can see, I'm sorry, the result is, again, if I check whether x is greater than 10 or not, the result again is false. But because x is equal to 10, so the result of x less than or equal to 10 is going to be true. The result x greater than or equal to 10 will be equal to true as well. So these are some basic Boolean operators, so comparison operators in R, and there are two more important comparison operators. If I want to check whether x is, as I told you, that x is was assigned to, so there are two things. One is if I say x is equal to 10, now these two lines of code are doing two different things. What this code is doing is making x equal to 2, right? Which we already assigned. I do not need to run it again. But what this is doing, when you have 2 times equal, this is asking the question whether x is equal to 10 or not. And as we already have assigned that x is equal to 10, then this will definitely return true. And let's assume if I x was another number, then it will return as false. In the same way, if now this code, the second operator is asking the question whether x is not equal to 10, right? But because x is equal to 10, then when I run this code, it will return as false. So let me see if there are any questions. Okay, so vector is a list of homogeneous data types. Can we say vector is a list of same data types? Now the list is another data structure in R, so I'm not going to use the word list, but the entities inside the vector will be of the same data types. Yes. So Kashif Ali is asking, can table function be applied for vectors with numeric and logical? Yes, table function can be applied for all the vectors. Yes. Obviously asking the question, and factor is list of items having different data types. No. I will be cautious about using the word list over here, because list is another separate data structure which we are not going to talk about this. But right now the answer to this question is, and factor is list of items of different data types. No, factor variable will have the same data types. Rather, within the factor variable, each individual items, the factor will be saved in the form of a vector, and within the vector, the individual entities will be the level of the same variable, or not the variable. It will be the levels of the same vector, or in some simple words, you can say that factor in R is just a categorical variable in a data frame or a column, or in another. Say if you have a column, let's assume male or female. When you save that thing in R, that will be in the form of a factor variable, and that you can save in the form of a vector. I hope I'm able to understand. I'm able to communicate this thing correctly. If not, please ask me the questions again. So now we go to one. All this discussion was intended to reach to this point, which is the data frame, right? We obviously, these data structures which we talk about, they are the building blocks, but our main interest is in something which we call as the data set. In R, we call it is the data frame. And so just as a formal textbook definition of a data frame is a table or a two-dimensional array like structure in which each column contains values of one variable and each row contains one set of values from each column. It's a bit complicated. I mean, it is not very complicated, but it seems a bit verbose, the definition. But simple as that, let me explain with example. If you have a data set which is known as empty cars, and this is again loaded in the base R. If you have R installed, you'll have this variable in it by default. right? And you can there are some data sets which are there in R by default, and you can play with them to understand different concepts, and empty cars is one of them, and it's a database related to different cars, right? So first of all, when you get a data set, you can do a few things with that, right? uh, One thing you can do it is just write the name of the data set and just like run it, the code, and you will get the elements of the data set printed like this. But this is not something which I would recommend you to do, because it will, if a data set is very long and things like that, and things may get a bit complicated, um, uh, you you will run, you may not get a very pretty look of the output. So a better way to do is to just use head function and use the name of the data frame as an argument. And what it's going to do, it is going to print the first 6 rows of the data set, only the 6 rows by default, if you just use the default way to run the head function. And what's it's going to do, it's going to give you a idea about what are the different variables or the column names, and what is the structure of the different data of the data set. Right here we can see that there is mpg, there is column name disp, hp, etc., which I do not know what does it mean, right? But I just get an idea, okay, these are the names of the variables. And what I want to do, if I want to like increase the number of rows, I can add the argument of n equal to whatever number of rows I want. For example, if I want rather than for 6 rows, I want 10 rows, then I can just run this function with which is essentially the same function, but the number of rows are increased, and we can see that I have 10 rows rather than 6 rows. Okay. Second way which we can use, we can see the structure of the data frame or the data set, is to use this str function. So what is this str? This is basically, it stands for structure. And just what you are going to do, you have to just put in the name of, I'm sorry for this. Sorry for this. Okay. I'm going to put in the name of the data frame inside this argument. And what I will get is the structure of the data set. Okay. So what it is happening then, when I print the same, when I run this function for this data frame, it's telling me that, okay, the type is data frame. That's the first thing it's telling me. It's telling me that it has 32 observations. It's telling me that, which means that there are 32 rows in total. That's what it is telling me. Okay. And in the same way, it's telling me that there are 11 variables. So in the first line, I'm getting some basic information. The type of the structure is data frame. There are 32 observations, and there are 11 variables. This is the basic. Now it starts to tell me about information about the individual variables. The first variable is mpg. It's of the type numeric, which means that the elements, okay, we talked about the type of the variable, right? So what does this mean? That individual, like this 21, this is of the type numeric, this is numeric, and so on, right? In the same way, so on, these are of the type, like this is quantitative. That's what it means. Like whenever you see numeric, that means it's quantitative, and so on. Like you can see the type of each variable. Somewhere it will be characters. Right now, this data set of all of the variable types is numeric, but somewhere it will have characters. Some will have the variable type as string or things like that. So here you can see the structure of the data frame, and some of it will also print out some of the values for a few of them, so that you can get an idea, okay, what is there in them. Okay. Now, if you have any question related to whatsoever you have talked about data frames, please ask me in the okay, can you explain one more time what exactly do I need to explain, Salima? Please be specific about what do I need to explain about. Okay, I'm happy to explain, but if you can tell me what exactly are you not clear about, I'm happy to go back to that point. Okay, so now I have this data set inside R, but I don't know what is different variable. For example, I do not know what does this mean. What does this mean, right? So I'm going to give you a very basic learning to learn skill for R. If you have a function, let's assume, like we, rather than talking about this data set, we also talked about another function which is known as mean, right? We used it earlier as well. So I do not know what does this mean is, how to work with it, right? What I can do is I can just use the name of the function. I remove these brackets. I can use the name of the function and just type in question mark sign before that and just run this thing. And what is going to happen? Okay, it is going to give me, okay, right. Okay, so what is happening in this portion of your R Studio? Yeah, let me increase the size of it so that I can just show it to you. Okay, so you will get the description of this mean. When you run it with question mark, what is this function, how to use it, what are the arguments, and a lot of details related to that function. And this is something which works for almost every function in R, right? You don't know anything, just write question mark before that very function and you will get a lot of data or a lot of information related to that function inside R. So because empty cars is a data set inside the base R, so they have description for empty cars as well. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to read question mark and write empty cars, the name of the empty cars. What I'm going to get is the description, which is the name of the data set, motor trend car road tests, right? It's a description of the data set, which I at this time do not need to go into the details of. And what I'm interested in is that individual column names. Okay, these are the column names. Okay, and so you can see that you will see when we went through the structure of the data set, we just saw these column headers, which is mpg only, right? But you will ask the question that what is mpg? So it is mile per US gallon. In the same way, for each one of the variable you have the description of them, which is very important for you. And again, for some of the variables, see over here, like you have the this is categorical variable, and it has the levels of it. But here you can see it's not listed as a categorical variable. WS is listed as a numerical variable. So if you have to process, you have to change that into a categorical variable. So these are the basic things which you need to understand while processing a data set. If there are any questions, again, you can put them in the chat. Let me just readjust the screen so that I can focus on the code screen. I'm having a problem in moving that towards that direction. Please bear with me. Okay, so this is a simple trick which you can keep on learning if you are stuck on any aspect of R. Let me see if there are any questions in the chat. Okay, so the question was, kindly if you can explain data frame functions head. Okay, happy to do that. So let's assume the concept was that I get a data set. This is empty cars. And I will explain it later that in your real practice, this empty cars is automatically loaded beforehand inside your R environment in the base R. This is a part of the base R. But before reaching to this point in the real world, you will have to first of all load the data set. And I'm not explaining that loading part in this video, but I'm assuming that for this description, you have already loaded the data set. So once you have loaded the data set, you want to see what is in the data set. And one way, for example, in Excel or in what we will do in Excel, you will just open the sheet and you will see everything in front of you. And same, you can see the spreadsheet form in the form of in other softwares like in Stata and in SAS, but you want to see how the data looks like, right? So you would take this function head and you would put the name of the data frame inside this head as an argument and just run it. So what it will do, it will give you some information. First of all, it will give you the first 6 rows. It will print out first 6 rows of the data frame for you, which will have the information on the names of the variables as well as the how does the rows look like and things like that, right? And I can go forward because this is not coming in one of the screen, so this button will help me navigate forward to backward. And if you want to print more rows, you can just use this n equal to something argument, where something will be the number of rows which you want to print out, and then if you run this one, you will have that many rows. Here we have 10 rows that will be printed out. Okay, so the next function which I explained, if we want to see the structure of the data set, you run this str function and you will get the structure of the data set. They will explain the type of the data structure, which is the data frame, which is the name of it, which is the technical name of a data set used in R. It is saying that is 32 observations and it has 11 variables. Okay, so I hope that particular point was clear. And if it is still not clear, I'm happy to answer it now or later, but whenever you ask me the question again. And I talked about the structure. I talked about the how to find out the more details about the data set, and I'm going to move forward. Okay. So the main point related to this this description is that whenever you get a data set, you need to know, first of all, see the data set, right? So you have a few options, which is head is here. You can see the structure of the data set, and you can see like if the data set is the part of base R or any other package, then you can use this question mark and the name of the data set. Another thing which you can do is very simple, as because we are kind of obsessed with seeing the data set in the form of a spreadsheet. So I can also use this function view with one thing is very important, which I forgot to mention. R is case sensitive. What do I mean by case sensitivity? Whatever I'm typing, if I just type like I increase, I use capital MTRs, then it will run an error, right? It will not recognize it. So, okay, so it's kind of, so it's giving me a direction, but it didn't run it because it wants me to use the same case as there in the documentation. So we will have to be very much careful about this, otherwise you will get into trouble. So what I'm going to do is going to use the function view with v as capital and put in the data frame name and just run it. And what it's going to do, it's going to open the data set in the form of a separate spreadsheet. So this is the way we are used to be looking at data sets in our Excel or SPSS or Stata or SAS. Like we are used to be looking at data sets like this. So if you are like, you want to see a data set like that, what you do is use the view function. It will open another window for you, right? And you can just have a look at that, and then you can close this window and then come back to your original field, your original code window. So that is another way where you can see data sets. So moving forward, I will talk a bit about functions and packages in R. And one thing which I told you people is something which is known as okay, I just did a mistake. Okay, one is known as base R, right? And another is known as packages in R. So base R is some kind of a functionality which is present in the basic R, which means that you do not load any function. You just install R and R Studio, you will have those functionality. But there are a lot of functionality. It's a huge universe of functionality which is present in which we call as packages. And again, the technical, I'm not very good in definitions, as you would have guessed right now, because I was kind of confused with a few definitions. I'm just like, I think that it works better when you explain by examples. So, but again, just when we are teaching something, we have to put in definition. A package is a package bundle together. If you want a textbook definition of a package in R, here is it. And a package is a bundle, something which bundles together code, data documentation, and test, and is easy to share with others. So in other words, in simple words, package is a functionality which is adding over and above the base R. And there are about 14,000 packages in R, which are growing every day. Everybody, you can make your own package as well. So if you want, and that's one way to showcase your work. And one important package which we'll be talking about today is known. It's a very, very good package, and it is the go-to package if you cannot kind of in this era, if you're uh, working in R, this is something which you cannot uh, go away from, which is known as the Tidyverse package. And this is, again, like everything in R is open source. Obviously, you do not need to pay anything for it. And the good thing about Tidyverse package is that it is a combination of many other packages. So either you load each one of these packages, or you just load the Tidyverse package, and that all of these packages will be loaded for you. So moving forward, one thing specifically about packages, and again, one thing specifically about R code, if you want a portion of your code not to run, right, or if you want to explain your code, for example, sometime I will try to add some description like talking about packages, packages in R. Now this is something for somebody to understand my code, right? I want to just put in comments. Now, when I put in this hash key, this pound sign, this will not run. Whatsoever after this line, the whole of the thing will not run. It is just a comment. So this is one way. So what is happening in this? If I just remove this pound sign or a hash key, it's going to run. And when you have when you're using a particular package for the first time, you'll have to install that package. So in order to install that package, you have to use this function install dot packages function, and inside the brackets you have to put the name of the package. Important thing is to note that you have to put the name of the package inside of the quotation marks. If you do not do that, this will give you an error. If you run that, I'm not going to run that because it's going to take some time. You have to do that, and it will install your packages, and it's automatically as if some of the bars will be running as there is an installation process. And once you are done with the installation of the packages, then you will, the second thing is that you have to load the package. Now, installation of the package is something which you have to do once in your computer, and the second, whenever you close it, you do not need to install it again, and next time you have to just run it. You have to just load the library. So to load a package, you just need to use the library argument, library function, and the argument will be the name of the package, this time without the quotation marks, right? So, and then you will just run it, and that will be loaded. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this library package, this Tidyverse package, and there is another package which is known as Gapminder. That's also I'm going to use. I've loaded these two packages. Okay, so what is Gapminder? You must be aware about Gapminder. It's a famous data visualization platform, and this data set is from there. And what this package does, the Gapminder packages, it loads the Gapminder data sets. One of the things which it does, it loads the Gapminder data set. And as I said, whenever you load the data set, first thing you need to do is to see the head of the Gapminder. As we can see that this Gapminder data set has these columns: country, continent, year, life expectancy, population, GDP, and there are many other columns in that. In the same way, I can, as I said to you people, that I can also, if I want, I can use this structure function, and it will give me the different types of, when it runs, it gives me the types of the table, what is the data set. Now this is telling me that the type of the data structure is table. I'm not going to explain what a table is, but just assume that it is the same as data frame for the time being. And then it's going to give me the names of the individual columns. Here you can see that because it was already processed, it is loaded as in the form of a factor variable, where the names are the countries and so on. So it is going to give me some details of the individual variables. And okay, so another way to see a data set is also a glimpse function. It works similar to the uh, str function as well, and its output is also similar, a bit different. It's You can use whichever you one you prefer. And as I told you, if you want to see uh, the data set in the form of a spreadsheet, you can use the view function as well. So that's the third thing which you can do. Okay, so now we come to the main thing. This is the data set, which is the gap minded data set, and it has this many columns, and these variables, the column are the variables, and we want to just play with it, and I want to demonstrate something related to this. And then Salima is again asking a question. Let me see, what is she asking? Is it that different packages have different kinds of data sets, or the opportunity to program the codes? Each data set, each package is unique. Some of the packages will have data sets, some of the packages will have functions. So it's just like adding some functionality to your R base R, and you will get to know this. Each package is different from other. Some of them have data sets, and some of them do not have data sets. So this is a simple answer to your question. And going forward to this is that what we are going to do right now is we are going to play with this data set. It is the gap minded data set, right? And what first of all, what I want to do, let me go again to this view of gap minded data set. And what I can see, that I have a column which is named as country, which means that I have information on different countries in this data set. And what I'm interested in is to get the information only for Pakistan. Okay, so what I do, I mean, in other words, what I'm interested in, because a row has information for each individual countries for different years, right? And I'm interested only information relevant to Pakistan, right? So in other words, I want to limit the data set where country is equal to Pakistan. So what I can do over here is to use something which is known as filter. Okay, so let me, rather than talking about this code, let me just go through step by step what it is doing. So I will use something which we known as filter. That is a functionality which is present in the Tidyverse function. Tidyverse package. Okay, and in the Tidyverse package, we have something filter. And when you're filtering something, let me just hide that thing, the code chunk below that. And so the first thing which you need to give to the filter function is the name of the data set. That is the first thing which you will give it, right? The second thing which you need to give it is the name of the column which we are interested in, which is, in this case, we are interested in country. And the third thing which you are interested in is, now you will say whether the country is, ask the question whether the country is equal to Pakistan, and you have to put Pakistan in the form, in the quotes, right? So what it is doing, it's saying that take the gap minded data set. From the gap minded data set, take the country column, and from the country column, limit it to the rows where country is equal to Pakistan. And you have to remember that you have to use these two times equal signs, because what it is doing, it's using the gap minded data set, taking the gap minded data set, from the gap minded data set, asking the question whether country is or is not equal to Pakistan. If the country is equal to Pakistan, then it is going to filter on those rows, right? So if I just leave it here and just run it, what it's going to do, it's going to just print out all those rows which have country equal to Pakistan. And let me do that actually, right? So here you can see that all the rows where the country is equal to Pakistan have been filtered out. So that's not what I want to do. I just want to save it to another data frame, which I can manipulate or do some analysis on later on. Because if I leave it as such, it will be just printed out and nothing else will be done. So what I want to do is just to use another name for this. So within the gap minder, I can give this data frame another name, and I just assign it to the same code, right? So I will just, the following code is exactly what I did right now. So I'm going to remove that. And so what it is going, it's whatever data frame I got it over here, I'm just going to assign it to this new name. So we'll get the same data set filtered and assigned to another name, which essentially will make a copy of the reduced data set. And I'm going to just, again, as we will get any data set, I will just going to run the head of it. Just run it. And you can see that you have the new data set has rows limited to Pakistan. I hope this point is clear. And if it is not clear, as always, please do not hesitate to ask questions. Okay, so in the same way, I think I was intending to go into some data visualizations as well, but because I think I am assuming that it is already got overwhelming, so I will just talk about a couple of more functions. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, so that as I'm talking about these two functions, I will and then answer them in the chat. So the second thing which I want to do is, let's assume we are interested not only in Pakistan, but we are also interested for data for some years in Pakistan. Like, let's assume I'm interested in the gapminder data set for Pakistan for, say, a particular year. So I can also use the same filter function. And here what I'm going to do is use the same filter function. And so this is the filter function. And I'm going to take the gapminder data set, and from the gapminder data set, take the country and check whether the country is equal to Pakistan or not. And the code, because is going to the second line, but that's okay, because that's going in continuity. And I'm going to add another argument as well. So and is going to say, check whether it is equal to Pakistan, whether the country is equal to Pakistan, and for each row also check that whether year is greater than 1960 or not. So, and I'm going to save this data frame to the name data framed gapminder Pakistan after 1960. So now if I save it and I run the head, I will get the rows for Pakistan after 1960. So that's you can see that the country in all the rows is Pakistan, and year is greater than 1960, which is 1962, 1967, and so on. So okay, let me see what happened. Just a minute. Okay, in the same way, I can also find out, for whatever reason I want to find out the data for Pakistan and India from the gapminder. I can say that use the filter function, take the data set, and use the country variable, and add check whether the country is Pakistan. And this vertical, this symbol is for or. So I'm asking whether the country is equal to Pakistan or the country is equal to India, and then save it to Pakistan, India, and then print this data set, or find out the head, print the head of this data set. And this is giving me the data set for Pakistan or India, right? And so on. I can just filter on multiple conditions in the same way. So this is, I'm going to move forward in the interest of time. And one last thing which I want to talk about is how we talked about selecting rows. If we want to select some of the columns as compared to others, for example, if again in this I'm interested in the country, some of the columns and not all of them, what I can use, I'm interested in country, continent, year, and life expectancy, or some of the columns and others. So what I can use is the select function from the Tidyverse package. And what is that? And I'm going to so I've used a bit complicated version of that, where I've explained the pipe operation over here, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just explain the way I did it in the previous code chunk. So let's assume I have to select some of the columns. So I'm going to use the select verb or the select function. I'm going to type the name of the data set which I'm interested in. And I'm going to, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to type in the names of the columns which I'm interested in. Say I'm interested in only country column, right? So I think I might be running into some error over here. Okay, yeah. No, this is not how it works. So for me to explain it, I have to explain the pipe function before that, which I will do the next time, hopefully, because I think the session might have already got overwhelming. So for the time being, I think we used the filter function. We will use the select function the next time. And I think it's time to just conclude the session. And if there are any questions, you can ask in the comments, or there, how do we type or? Yeah. So the simple question is, how do we type or? Uh, so let me answer this. Type, you do not need, when you're saying or, you just need this symbol between two of your conditions, which is, I don't know what to call it, but this is the symbol. Let me just type it in isolation as well. And this is the symbol. So what, let me explain it over here is, so what it's saying is country is equal to Pakistan or country is equal to India, right? And then uh, from the gapminder, filter to those rows where country is equal to Pakistan or country is equal to India. Okay, so that is one thing. This is India or Pakistan, exactly. This is India or Pakistan. Okay, yeah. So the pipe symbol, I think we will explain it the next time, because I'm assuming, because though the fact that I'm enjoying the session very much, many people are finding it, might be finding it quite overwhelming. So it is a good time to call this session off, unless Hassan have anything to say or ask.
Yeah. Dr. Amir, is there any take-home assignment for the students
Okay.
or
Yeah.
summary?
Yeah. Before I get to that, I think there is another question Salima is asking. Can you find out the list of all packages and description somewhere? Exactly. That's a very good question. Let me actually very quickly show you the link for that, and that is our packages. Very quickly. Uh, there is a very good link from. Just bear with me for a few seconds. I'm going to just Google that and just project the same page. And yeah, I got it. Let me share my uh, screen. Let me remove the previous one, and then uh, okay, just bear with me because sharing the second screen is going to take a few seconds. Okay, so hopefully you're able to see a new uh, screen. Actually, just a minute. Let me, because yeah, I hope so. This is the list, and it is by function, uh, and it's a huge list of packages. This is where you will, and as I told you, there are approximately more than 14,000 packages, and you can like go through them. And let's assume like this is, um, we go to one of them as an example. You can go to that, and you can also retrieve the PDF of the individual packages where all the details are very much listed. And the good thing is all this information is open source. You never have to pay anything to anyone for this. So yeah, this is it, and I will share the description of this. I will share the link of this in the description, and as well as in the WhatsApp group. Thanks for asking that question. And okay, so okay, and then with that, so the question from Hassan was, do we have any assignment? I'm quite aware of the fact that this may be overwhelming for many of you. The idea is that you see this video and you see this again. And I'm going to do is I'm going to put this description in the group as well. I'm going to arrange this video in the form of time chunks and timestamps. So you will be able to navigate through different portions of this talk. And the assignment is that I will share this document in the form of a PDF in the WhatsApp group, and you have to go through this lecture and the code and practice that on your own and come up with questions uh, where you have for the next session. That's one thing. The second thing is that you have to evaluate this first session. I will prefer that you do that evaluation on uh, in the comments of this video, because that is where I read that the data becomes organized, and when you're evaluating that, you can you can write anything, but I need answers to three questions. What was something which went good for this session? Which was something which was not very good? And general suggestion to improve the future sessions. So that those are the three questions which I want to get answered when I'm looking to the evaluation. And I think, okay, can you share the link in the WhatsApp group? Yes, exactly. I will share that link in the WhatsApp group as well. Thank you. Or I think there are a few more comments or questions. Hassan, do you want to say something?
Yes,
Something?
Dr. Amar, I just wanted to ask one question. What
Yeah.
is the total number of sessions that you will be conducting? And will the sessions always be conducted at the same time on a weekly basis? So, logistically, that would help the participants. Thank you.
Yeah. So the answer to your first question is, for the timing, I'm planning for 3 sessions, and I'm going to see how the experience goes, right? And then we can, from there, what ideally I would want to continue, but obviously that is dependent on the response. The second is the timing. Tentatively is it's the same time, because as you know that I'm also a full-time student and I'm studying, and my time is very tough with the end of degree. But this is again, tentative time will be the same for the next 2 weekends, which is 9 p.m. Pakistan time. But if there is some change, I will communicate that too through the WhatsApp group. After that, in the long run, what I want to do is to organize more focused sessions. For example, um, maybe 1 or 2 session workshop on data visualization, focused on data visualization. We can have a total workshop on your Tidyverse, which I just introduced, and so on. So there are so many areas where we can, if you have the basic knowledge, we can build up on that, right? So going to a few more comments or questions which are there, and thank you very much for a very patient and extensive session. This was really helpful. Please possible share the data sets and relevant links for practice. So the data sets which I used right now, I do not, you will not need any other external resource to use these data sets. Those are already, first of all, the empty cars data set is in the base R, and the Gapminder data set is there when you load the Gapminder package. But in the future, if we are using some other data sets, I will definitely share them, and the notes will definitely be shared in the form of a PDF in the WhatsApp group, and that will the link will also be shared for this package in the WhatsApp group. Okay, thank you, Salima. Okay, and then what is it? Okay, very useful. Very useful. Let me see if there is any question. So there is no question, and we have almost near to the 2 hours mark. And I'm extremely thankful to those who have stayed with me till this long in this live session. I will request you people to keep doing that in the future sessions as well, because the uh, interactivity of these sessions is something which is going to add a lot of value to these sessions. With that, I'm not going to hold you people more. Hassan, do you want to say something before we call
Yes,
it off?
just one last question. You had discussed that there could be a way that we could have a group where people could actually publish. So if people are already being trained on R, can they be associated in some way to publication so that at the end of the day this becomes the incentive for them to complete through the whole course, something like that?
So this the objective of this session was not to give an introduction to R, but what you are saying, that is a bit beyond the scope of it. But we can discuss this point later. You can put a message in the WhatsApp group, and we can take it from there. For this point, just we can see what we can do for there. Okay. Uh,
Thank you.
okay, and there are a couple of. Let me see if there is any comment or questions there. Okay, thank you. Thanks to all of those who have been with me and still writing the comments. I'm assuming that it's not very easy to listen to our programming for the new learners for this long. The good thing was that things were very simple, and bad things we cannot do the same things simultaneously because we miss the next step. I can replicate these steps by myself. That's exactly what the idea. You get sensitized to the concepts in the sessions, in the live sessions, and then you have to revisit the same talk because with the same link, the recording will be available. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to organize this talk with the help of different timestamps. So the way it happens that when it get organized with the help of those timestamps, you will be able to navigate to and fro in different portions of the video. And then what I will suggest that you do all of this on your own, right? You will have two resources available for that. One is this video, which will be organized in timestamps, and second is that the PDF document. Using that, you have to revisit these resources and do it all on your own and come up with questions in the later sessions. And thanks a lot for giving us your feedback. And with that, I'm going to call this video off and call it a day. Thanks once again to all of those who attended the session, and I will also be thankful to those who will be viewing the recording of this session. Take care for the time being. Allah Hafiz and bye.